Today I'm joined by Steve Masters. Steve is the owner and CEO of Accord Consulting, which is a Sage business partner based in Edenbridge. And that's twice been named Sage Business Partner of the Year. And what they do is they help finance teams implement and get lasting value from Sage. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
No, look, thank you for joining us. So, Steve, for anyone who doesn't know Accord Consulting, how would you describe what you do and who you do it for?
Yeah, good question. I guess I'd say that we're a specialist sort of SaaS business software company. We help other businesses modernize their finance functions using Sage Intacct, which is a cloud-based finance management system. We've been working with Sage Solutions for over 20 years. And our focus during that entire time has been on how do we, help companies replace their legacy finance systems with more modern, up-to-date solutions. And I guess in more recent times, we'd probably say, we don't really implement software. We help finance teams with getting better outcomes. The software is really the method of getting there.
Like it. Okay. Well, look, thank you for explaining that, Steve. So let's go back to the beginning, or maybe even a little bit before the beginning. Was being a business owner something that you always wanted to do, Steve? How did becoming a business owner, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I guess, well, originally I was working in industry, like many people, and sort of, worked my way up through the ranks, and eventually was working for a number of different, quite well-known companies at senior level in finance. And I hadn't really initially set out to build those skills in order to set up my own company. So I guess opportunities came my way, connections came my way, and it became the next obvious step in my career at a certain point.
Yeah. And thinking back to when you started out, why did you want to set up your own business? Because setting up a business isn't always for everyone, Steve.
No.
So why did you want to do it?
I guess really it was opportunity that we saw. Having worked in industry, I've worked through a lot of system projects. And what I found was that mid-sized companies typically would bring in IT people to do those projects for them.
Okay.
And what we realized was actually a lot of those projects failed because the technology wasn't wrong per se, but the wrong people were implementing it.
Yeah.
And so we saw a gap in the market for people with business skills that spoke the language of business, but had strong technology capability to come in and implement those systems. And so you implemented them in a way that was right and appropriate for the company rather than technology first. And so seeing that gap in the market is what spurred us on to say, let's do this. Let's set something up that's very different. And let's test our theory and go all out. So yeah, I quit my job, started the company, and here we are 20 years later.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so you, I think I'm right in saying you set up Accord back in 2003, was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the biggest challenge that you've faced growing the business from sort of going from that, that Sage reseller, if I can sort of refer to that, into what you are today, a multi-award winning partner working with names like, and I've got these off your website, so NATO, Notting Hill Housing Group. So what's the biggest challenge you faced, and how did you overcome it?
I suppose when you first start out, you've got the sum zero of or the sum total of zero customers, right? So winning that first customer is always crucial, right? Finding somebody that will put their trust in you when you don't really have a track record. So that's when you start business, that's always your biggest challenge. And then I think, building a culture in the business that is about making sure that you look after your customers, even exceed their expectation of what customer care looks like, and then your customers will stay with you for a very long time. And in our sort of industry, we're not selling nuts and bolts, we're selling, people's time. Having customers that remain with you over a long period of time is really crucial to that growth. Otherwise, every year you're almost starting again. So yeah, I think, trust, fostering trust and building a culture of, exceptional customer service are definitely challenges, but if you can master them, they're the route to growth.
So, so I guess two words that I picked up there was perhaps the biggest challenges were winning business initially, and then a big focus on giving great service so that you retain. So
Yeah,
win and retain were two key focuses of yours
yeah, without
when
doubt.
you set up. Okay. And was there, thinking back, and I know we're talking over 20 years ago, but thinking back to then, was there anything in particular that you did to win business or to retain? I mean, you've already mentioned one thing in retaining business, which is trust, building
Yeah.
trust with your clients. So is there anything else that's helped you to win and retain business over those years?
I suppose to begin with, it was about, you had to rely on, so you have to focus on what do you have, not what don't you have, right?
Mm.
So obviously being positive. So what we had when we started out was a track record in industry
Mhm.
of, being at the boardroom table, being able to speak that language of business, being able to understand business and different business models. So when we went and spoke to prospective customers, we were talking their language. We didn't talk in IT speak. We didn't talk technology. We spoke about the challenges and issues that they had and how we could help them address them and overcome them. And I think that was really what that mid market at that time was crying out for, and it resonated, and people responded to it, and that's how we got off the ground. And yeah, I think whenever you start something new, you can have the most detailed business plan in the world, but actually you just got to get stuck in, get out there, talk to people, and it will happen. But you've got to take some action, right?
Yeah, I think that reminds me of a formula that I use in coaching, which is be times do equals have. So who you are multiplied by what you do equals what you have.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think you've sort of summed that up nicely there. You might have a great business plan, but unless you do things to deliver on that business plan,
Right.
you're not going to have what you want to have.
Yeah.
So it's the be times do equals have.
Yeah.
So who you are, that you said there, we've got industry knowledge, etc. Great, but unless you do something and take
Yeah.
action,
Yeah.
that's not going to help. It's like there's some great examples of companies out there who have had great products or services, but because they haven't gone out and marketed those products or services in the right
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
they haven't been successful. Whereas perhaps other companies that didn't have such a great product or service, but actually went out and marketed those,
Yeah.
and took action, speaking to people, they were more successful. So I think that's great. Yeah, have a business plan, but yeah, you've got to take action on it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. And so um, your own website talks about systems drift.
Yes.
So systems that are fine on day one, but they decay as people fall back to spreadsheets or a key person leaves. So tell us a bit more about that, Steve.
Yeah. I guess sort of traditional business systems were, you bought a license, you installed it on a server, you went to great effort to configure it, and then you started using it. Um, And what we find is that the effort to get the system in is quite high, and
Mm,
the business can't sustain that effort,
mm,
forever. And so the system goes in, and on go live, it's very well aligned to the business. The system and the business are on the same track. But of course, as is the case in any business, businesses don't stand still. Your market changes, your customer demands change, the things that your competitors are doing change, and you have to respond to that. And so what you find is that the business starts to evolve and to change and become different. And if you've got a piece of software that you're using to run that business and you're not able to make it change and adapt at the same time and pace that you are as a business, you find over a period of time that what the software's doing is continually doing the same thing repeatedly, time after time, because that's what you told it to do. But the business is somehow moving off in a slightly different direction, and at some point that gap becomes noticeable, and then eventually becomes so big that you then have to do something about it, because the system's no longer serving the needs. So the system and the business have drifted apart. So that's why we talk about drift. And I guess the change that we've made as a business in the last 2 years is to move to cloud-based software, where we're doing, we used to do an upgrade once a year, perhaps for a client on an on-premise system. We're now doing that upgrade every 3 months. New
Right.
features, new functionality, and instead of doing a small number of large projects, we work on the basis of doing lots of small incremental change. So every 3 months, when those new features come out, we look at those with our customer. We work out what they need to deploy in order to keep the system tightly aligned to what they're doing now as a business. Because of that incremental change, constantly updating, we don't find that's the system and the business drift apart in the same way as they used to.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's really, and there's a number of things that stood out to me there. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort to put these systems in place, but the key thing is then, yeah, regularly keeping on top of them, keeping them up to date, regularly
Yeah,
reviewing them and how they're being used and what's available, etc. Because
yeah,
what you highlighted there is, because if you don't do that, then it actually ends up being a massive task again at some point in the future
absolutely that.
to
Yeah,
go, right, this system, we're not using it properly, right? We've got to do a whole big audit of it and everything, rather than doing bits as you go along. And the thing,
correct.
when I was reading about this, Steve, about your business, um, I just felt that that's a challenge that a lot of business owners recognise well beyond the finance software. It's a great
Oh
example,
yeah,
the
yeah,
finance software, but actually this relates to all systems and processes in a business. And when I refer to systems and processes, I'm not just referring to IT, I'm just referring to all systems and processes,
yeah,
written ones, documented ones, etc.
yeah.
So yeah, that really resonated with me. And out of interest, Steve, what have you learned about stopping that drift in a called consulting itself? Not just in your clients, but in your business.
Yeah, well, we actually fundamentally had to reinvent ourselves, I
Yeah,
guess, post-COVID,
right.
to recognize the need for greater flexibility for people to access systems remotely and so on. And rather than selling, on-premise software with large license fees and big chunks of consultancy days, we've moved to a completely subscription-based model, subscription for the software and subscription for our services.
Yeah,
And so, we found the market shifted around us, and we had to fairly quickly reinvent the way we've approached things, and constantly do that. So, keeping an eye on the market, understanding how people want to buy software and consume our services has meant that we couldn't just stay where we were. We've had to reinvent how we deliver, and we've kind of, I suppose, over that time, we've invented a sort of 3-step process that we take customers through.
right.
Um, and we call it the harmony wave. So accord is, the word accord speaks to, harmony and harmonization, and we like to think that what we're trying to do is bring our knowledge, the customer's knowledge, and the capability of the system together to function together,
Yeah,
to be in accord with each other. And I guess like I say, we have a 3-step approach. We talk about turning on, which is switching on the software very rapidly, getting them a very quick, time to value, then tuning the software in. So, continually making it fit what they do as a business and function the way they want to function, and then sort of turning up. So looking at new things they've never done before, and adding those into the mix. So, we might go to a client who, for technology reasons, has never effectively sold online. So we
Yeah,
can give them a solution that will allow them to hook up a web store to their back office system.
yeah,
So, we not only, take what's your present day, but we're also looking to say, well, how can we help you add value and expand over that time as well? So yeah, that three-step process has been something that we've probably learned the hard way, right? We've figured out how not to do it in order to figure out how we should do it, right?
yeah. Cool. I like that. And yeah, actually, one thing I read about you was I think you said something along the lines of the implementation is the start, not the finish.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I like that. And
yeah. I think a lot of people think go live is where the project ends.
yeah,
For us, actually, no, that's the starting line. Now it gets interesting because now we're on the new platform, we're live. We can now look at all the good things that you can do
yeah,
going forward. So yeah.
love that. Brilliant. Okay. And so you've gone um, from owner of the business, or you still own the business, but the owner of, let's say, a small business when it was set up back in 2003, to now owner and CEO of, what is it, a 20-person plus consultancy.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, actually, probably closer to about 35. We're hiring three more roles at the moment. So yeah, it's
okay.
constantly growing.
Yeah, 35-person plus, consultancy. So what have you learned about yourself along the way?
That's a dangerous question, isn't it? I think from a business perspective, I think one key thing is that when you start the business, you're everything. You're delivering, you're supporting, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the accounting. Um, you know, Understanding that you don't need to have all those skills, but hiring good people around you with those skills that can do those, and then letting go and empowering them to do those jobs, because you get to a point where you can't keep doing all of those functions. So yeah, what I guess I've learned to figure out what we need, you know, delegate, and also make sure that we bring in good people that are really capable and can understand our culture and methodology and follow through on it.
I like that, yeah. So I was reading a book recently, Steve, and it said, this phrase really sort of resonated with me. And it said, when growing or scaling a business, make yourself the dumbest person in the room. And I
Yeah,
thought that's a really cool phrase. I mean, I've heard the phrase, always hire people better than you. But I love that phrase. Make
yeah,
yourself the dumbest person in the room, because everybody else has got more knowledge and everything than you. And it said, make sure that you're asking the great questions, but that everyone else has got the great answers.
yeah.
And I think that's what
Nice.
what you're saying there is hire great people. And what I picked up from there as well, Steve, is you were sort of saying, yeah, understand what your strengths are, what your areas are of development, to get people around you that can plug those gaps. That's really cool. And if I gave you a magic wand, Steve, and you could solve one challenge in your business right now, what would that be?
I think having an understanding of what AI is going to do for
Yeah,
our business and for our customers' businesses 5 years from now.
yeah,
If I could know the answer to that, that would be very powerful.
absolutely. I think it'd all make us all a rich person, wouldn't it? And do you have interest? Do you have like a person in your business that is your AI champion?
Yeah, we do actually. So part of the team that we have here is a group of developers.
Yeah,
And so our head of development is challenged to, you know, understand how we can better use AI, but equally how we can, deploy it effectively for our customers. Because in the finance world, there's a lot of talk of AI, and there's a lot of functionality and capability. But I think most people have probably type something in very simple to something like Chat GPT, and it doesn't always return you the right answer. And in the world of finance, using AI to perform a function and it being 80, 90, 95% accurate is not good enough. You can't rock up to your audit and say, here's a set of numbers, we think they're about 95% right. In the world of finance, right is 100%. And so the challenge is making sure that we build AI tools that have got the right checks and balances built into them that allow us to understand how the model came by the result that it came by, and then still having a human involved in the process to review it, sanity check it, and sign it off. And I think that way you can build trust in AI, and it can be very effective in terms of dealing with the heavy lifting, and freeing up people to do more value add analytical type work. So rather than spending all month processing documents, you can spend a larger proportion of that time looking at the result.
Yeah, and I agree. AI, I always use the rule of thumb that it's 80% sort of accurate, 20% not accurate. So yeah. And the other thing that I heard recently was that any output from AI, we have to take ownership for as the human that's asking it to do that task, or to we've put a prompt in or something. We can't turn around and go, oh, that's what AI said.
Yeah.
No, we've got to take ownership for the output that comes from AI. So if, like as you said, if you provided something to a client and it was wrong, we can't turn around and go, oh, it's AI's fault. We've got to go, no, I take ownership for what I've asked to do. So I think that's a cool thing to remember. Okay, so look, Steve, if we were having this conversation 3 years from now, what would have to have happened for you to say we've achieved what we set out to do?
So we've when I talked about what happened after COVID and that we changed the model and how we delivered things, and across sort of from I guess 21 to 25, we 8x the turnover of the business with the new model. And then last year we set ourselves a challenge that by 2030 we want to take that number as our base point and we want to 5x. So I guess 3 years is broadly in the time frame that you're talking about, but we see the ability to grow dramatically, and we have a big ambition. Whether we'll achieve that entire goal, I don't know. But I think it's better to set a big ambition, something that we can all be inspired by. And if we get 70, 80% of the way there, that's better than having a small ambition and achieving it comfortably. So we're stretching ourselves. And so, yeah, I think, if it's 3 years from now, I'm looking, I expect that we should be at least double the size that we are today.
Brilliant. Moving towards that 5 times by 2030, which it's only really an extra year on from that 3 years, isn't it? So brilliant. I love the ambition there, Steve. And and I think I agree with you. Like we've got to set goals that we don't know how to achieve. If we set a goal that we know how we're going to achieve it, it's not really a goal, it's just a task.
That's a very good point.
And achieve that. So I'm a personal believer of actually goals should be things that we don't know how to achieve. And actually a great example of that, Steve, is I can't remember what American president, it might have been like JFK, that sort of said we're going to put man on the moon. When that was said, they didn't know how they were going to do it. They just sort of said, no, that's what we're going to do. And at that time, man had only just been into space, and only for, I think I'm right in saying, a few seconds, and on the edge of space. So I had no idea, but they said that's what we're going to do, and then worked out how they're going to do it. So I love the fact you set yourself that challenging goal. So look, well, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business and also your journey. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.